The first consequence arrived without drama. It came in the form of silence. No messages that morning, no calls, no confident instructions about utilities or access. The absence itself was the signal. When people who are used to control suddenly lose it, they pause, they wait, they try to understand what moved beneath their feet. I noticed the silence immediately, but I did not react to it. I continued my routine. I woke early. I opened the curtains. Morning light entered the house the same way it always had, touching the walls gently, without asking who owned them. I made tea. I sat at the table. I placed my phone beside my cup, face down. The house felt different now. Not louder, not brighter. Just settled, like it had exhaled. Around mid-morning, the property manager arrived. He was polite, professional, carrying a small tablet and a folder. "We will only take a few minutes," he said. He walked through the house with me. He checked locks, access points, utility panels, internet lines. He did not comment on furniture or photos. He did not ask questions. He followed documents. At the front door, he paused. "We will update access permissions today," he said. "Only registered users." I nodded. "Thank you." When he left, he handed me a new set of keys, clean, unmarked. He placed the old ones in an envelope. "These will be stored," he said. "No access without written approval." I held the new keys in my hand. They were heavier than I expected, or maybe I was more aware now. Keys are small objects, but they decide who enters and who waits outside. That afternoon, my phone rang. His name. I answered calmly. "What did you do?" he asked. The confidence was gone, not replaced by anger yet, just uncertainty. "I followed the law," I replied. "This is my house," he said quickly, as if saying it faster would make it true. There was a pause on the line. "No," I said gently, "it is not." Another pause, longer. "I'm on my way," he said. "You will need an appointment," I replied. He laughed, but the sound was forced. "Don't be difficult." I am not being difficult. I am being clear. I ended the call. I did not block him. I did not need to. Boundaries do not require blocking when they are legal. An hour later, a car stopped outside. I watched from the window. He stood at the door and knocked. Once, twice, harder the third time. I did not answer. I stood in the hallway holding the new keys. I listened to his footsteps outside. His phone vibrated. He called again. I did not pick up. After several minutes, he left. That evening, a message arrived from him. Short, sharp. "You have changed." I read it carefully. Then I placed the phone down and turned on the lamp beside the sofa. The light filled the room softly, pushing back the dark without effort. Yes, I had changed. Not into someone loud, not into someone cruel. I had changed into someone who understood that dignity does not ask for permission. The first consequences were not dramatic. No shouting, no scenes. Just closed doors, quiet systems, and the slow realization on the other side that silence was no longer empty. It was organized.
Panic does not arrive loudly at first. It begins with small mistakes. I noticed the first one when my phone rang early in the morning. It was not my husband. It was his sister. We had never been close. She had never called me directly before. "Can we talk?" she asked quickly. Her voice was tight. "I am listening," I replied. There was a pause, as if she had not expected calm. "There seems to be confusion," she said, "about the house, about accounts." "Yes," I said, "there is clarity now." Another pause. I could almost hear her thinking. "He is under a lot of stress," she continued. "The baby, the wedding. This situation is not good for him." I looked at the window while she spoke. The curtain moved slightly in the morning air. Light entered the room calmly, without reacting to anyone's stress. "I hope he finds stability," I said. "That's it?" she asked, surprised. "You won't help?" "I am helping, by respecting the law." She ended the call soon after. No goodbye, just a quick disconnect. The second sign came later that day. A message from my husband arrived. Long this time. Too long. "You know I never wanted things to go this way. We can fix this. Let's meet privately. No lawyers. We are family." Family. The word felt misplaced now, like a key that no longer fit the lock. I did not reply. I wrote the message down in my notebook. Date, time, words. Facts first. In the afternoon, the property manager called. "There was an attempt to access the garage," he said calmly, "using an old code. Was access granted?" "No," he replied. "We followed instructions." "Thank you," I said. I hung up and sat quietly for a moment. I imagined him standing there, pressing numbers, expecting doors to open simply because they always had before. That is how panic grows, when memory stops matching reality. The next morning, I received an email from a lawyer I did not recognize. Formal tone, urgent language. "Your husband believes there has been a misunderstanding regarding shared assets." I forwarded the email to my lawyer without comment. An hour later, my lawyer called me. "They are unsettled," he said plainly. "They assumed speed would work in their favor." "I assumed patience," I replied. He smiled through the phone. I could hear it. That afternoon, I went to the doctor for my checkup. The waiting room smelled of disinfectant and quiet worry. Other women sat with hands on their stomachs, eyes distant. We shared something without speaking. The doctor smiled at me. "Everything looks good," she said. "You should avoid stress." I nodded. Stress was loud. I lived quietly now. When I returned home, there were voices outside, raised ones, not shouting but urgent. I looked through the window. My husband stood near the gate with the woman. She was gesturing sharply. He was rubbing his forehead. The gate did not open. The property manager stood nearby, professional, neutral. "I just need 5 minutes," my husband said. "This is ridiculous." "I follow documents," the manager replied. I did not go outside. I watched. The woman's voice grew sharper. "You said this was handled," she snapped. "I thought it was," he replied. Thought. Assumption. They left soon after. The gate remained closed. The house remained quiet. I turned on the porch light even though it was still afternoon. The soft glow felt deliberate, visible, calm. My phone buzzed again. A message from him. "Please, let's talk." I read it slowly. Then I placed the phone face down. I made tea. As the kettle boiled, I felt something new. Not pleasure, not pride, but certainty. A clean, grounded certainty. If this story touches you, please like and subscribe. That evening, my mother called again. Her voice was different this time. "He came by," she said. "He was upset." "I see," I replied. "He said you are being cold." I smiled faintly. "I am being careful." She sighed. "People are talking." "People always do," I said gently. When the call ended, I sat in the dark living room, the lamp still off. I listened to the quiet. Panic lives on noise. It cannot survive long in silence. On the other side, phones rang more often. Messages grew longer, voices cracked. On my side, the house stayed steady. Lights worked, doors stayed closed, paper stayed true. Panic had arrived, and I did not need to meet it. I only needed to remain still. The meeting was scheduled for a Tuesday morning. Not because it was dramatic, because Tuesdays are practical. Offices are fully open, people are less emotional after Mondays, and not yet distracted by weekends. My father used to say, important conversations should happen on ordinary days. It makes the truth harder to deny. The conference room was quiet when I arrived. Long table, neutral walls, a glass of water placed neatly in front of each chair, documents stacked in precise order. I sat down and folded my hands in my lap. My husband arrived 10 minutes late.
The woman came with him. She looked tired now. Her confidence had thinned, replaced by irritation and worry. A lawyer followed them, carrying a briefcase too tightly, as if gripping it could stabilize the situation. My lawyer nodded to me. "We can begin." No one raised their voice, no one accused, no one cried. That was the confrontation. My lawyer slid the first document across the table, property ownership. He slid the second, utility control. The third, trust authority. Each page landed softly, but the weight was undeniable. "This cannot be correct," my husband said, leaning forward. "I lived there. I paid bills." "Usage does not equal ownership," my lawyer replied calmly. The woman spoke next. "You never said anything," she said, turning to me. "You let us plan." I met her eyes for the first time, not with anger, with clarity. I did not know then, and I am not required to explain now. Silence followed. Their lawyer flipped through papers quickly, too quickly. He stopped and cleared his throat. "The will is valid," he admitted. "There is no claim." My husband's face changed then. Not anger, loss. "You could have helped me," he said quietly. "We were married." I nodded once. Yes, we were. Marriage is not erased by betrayal, but trust is. "I am not taking anything from you. I am only keeping what was never yours." The room stayed silent. There was no victory speech, no satisfaction in my chest, only relief. Boundaries were discussed, written, signed, access denied, assets separated, contact limited. Everything done calmly, clearly, permanently. When it ended, they left quickly. No goodbye, no final look. I stayed seated for a moment longer. I touched the glass of water but did not drink. My hands were steady. Outside, the air felt lighter, ordinary again. I walked to my car and sat for a moment before starting it. I looked at my reflection in the mirror. I looked the same. That was the victory. Not transformation into someone else, but return to myself. Calm, intact, whole. The confrontation had happened, and nothing in me had broken. When I returned home that evening, the house welcomed me in a way it hadn't for weeks. The door closed behind me with a soft click, final and reassuring. The air smelled faintly of tea and clean wood, the ordinary sense of a home that had always been mine, but now, finally, fully so. I walked slowly through each room, the living room where we had all argued silently through absence and presence, the kitchen where I had poured tea countless times, each cup a small act of patience, the bedroom where the empty side of the bed had once been a symbol of betrayal. Everything looked the same, yet the house felt lighter, as if it had exhaled after holding tension for so long. I picked up the folder my father's lawyer had given me, the folder that had begun this quiet journey of power and patience. I did not need to open it tonight. I placed it carefully on the table, in the same spot where the keys used to rest. Keys no longer mattered here. Ownership was no longer a matter of metal or access. It belonged in paper, in law, and in the quiet acknowledgement of what was mine. I turned on the lamp beside the sofa. Its glow was soft but firm, filling the room evenly. Light, I realized, was another small symbol of order, calm, steady, consistent. It illuminated without judgment. It revealed no more than reality. And reality, after weeks of confusion and stress, was firmly on my side. The phone lay face down. There were no urgent messages waiting. My husband and the other woman had understood, at least enough to stop testing boundaries. The utilities, the house, the documents, everything was aligned. No intrusion, no unnecessary contact, no chaos. I walked to the window and looked outside. The street was calm. Neighbors were moving about in their ordinary routines. Life continued, just as it always had, unaffected by human drama. I realized that was a gift. I had restored order not by shouting, by forcing, or by anger, but by being deliberate, prepared, and patient. That was power few recognized, and even fewer respected, but it worked. Sitting at the table, I reflected on the weeks past. Shock, betrayal, and silence had been my companions. Panic had visited them on the other side, but here, in my home, the quiet had been my strength. Every cup of tea, every document carefully read, every locked door had been part of a plan that did not require spectacle. My father's lessons had guided me. Preparation, patience, and dignity are stronger than drama and anger. I prepared a simple meal for myself. Rice, vegetables, nothing extravagant. The act of cooking, serving, and eating alone was now peaceful instead of lonely. The house no longer echoed with absence and anxiety. It hummed softly with routine and control. That night, I walked through the rooms once more before bed. Each door closed properly, lights turned off carefully, except for the small lamp in the hallway that would guide anyone entering the home at night. Everything had its place. Everything had boundaries. Sitting on the sofa, I felt an unexpected calm seep through me. There were no celebrations, no declarations, just the quiet acknowledgement that order had returned, not imposed, not forced, but earned through patience and presence. Before going to bed, I touched the small envelope that contained my father's final documents. I whispered softly, almost to myself, "Thank you." He had taught me that power and patience could protect more than anger ever could. Tonight, I understood it fully. I turned off the lights. The house, my home, was finally at peace. And in that peace, I felt something deeper than victory, a restored sense of dignity, safety, and control over my life. The quiet, ordinary house had become my sanctuary again, and it would remain so.
Morning arrived like it always had, soft, steady, and unannounced. There was no storm, no dramatic reveal, no urgent message to shake the day awake. Just sunlight moving across the floorboards, brushing the furniture, touching the same spots it had for years. I had learned to notice small things, the ones that mattered quietly, without noise. I made tea and sat at the table. The folder with my father's documents lay beside me, neat and closed. I did not need to open it. It had already done its work. The house felt completely mine now, not because it was legally so, but because every room, every light switch, every key, every corner had been claimed with calm certainty. The baby kicked softly, reminding me that life moves forward regardless of the drama we endure. I rested my hand gently on my stomach and whispered, "We are safe. We are steady." It was a simple acknowledgement, but it carried more power than any words I could have spoken in anger. Days passed, ordinary in every sense. I returned to routines I had almost forgotten in the stress of betrayal. I cooked slowly, cleaned deliberately, and walked through the neighborhood observing quietly, connecting with small gestures of life outside the house. The world had not paused for what had happened. It was alive and ordinary and gentle, and I had a place in it that was now firmly mine. Messages from my husband stopped altogether. The absence of contact was no longer stressful. It was evidence. He had tested the boundaries, panicked, and retreated. He had discovered, quietly and painfully, that nothing could be forced. Silence and facts had triumphed over assumption and entitlement. I visited my lawyer once more, not out of urgency, but to check small details. Every document, every account, every utility confirmation was in perfect order. No surprises, no threats. The calm, measured preparation had produced results. Even social interactions returned to normal slowly. Friends and distant relatives, once distant and judgmental, noticed my composure. Some reached out, unsure if I was angry or vulnerable. I did not need to explain. I only lived my life steadily, and that was enough. People sensed the difference. They felt the quiet confidence that comes from knowing one's own value.
At home, I made small changes, nothing extravagant. A new lamp, fresh flowers on the cable, a throw folded neatly on the sofa. Each act was deliberate, a quiet signal that life was continuing, moving forward but under my control. Some nights, I would sit by the window with the baby asleep inside me, watching the streetlights flicker on. The world outside went on in its ordinary way. Cars passed, children laughed, a neighbor watered her plants. Life was ongoing, and I was part of it, not hidden, not fearful, not reacting, but present, steady, patient. It was in these moments I realized the most important thing. I had not just survived, I had reclaimed myself. Betrayal, loss, and shock had come, but they had not broken me. They had revealed a strength I did not know I fully possessed, the ability to remain calm, to prepare, and to act with dignity. The house no longer felt like a space of tension. It felt like a home. The folder, the keys, the documents, they were reminders, not tools of fear. They represented preparation, patience, and order, and I carried that order into every part of life from then on. I began planning gently for the future: finances, my child, the household, small projects I had postponed. Nothing rushed, nothing forced, every decision deliberate, every movement quiet but purposeful. I finally understood that life after betrayal was not about vengeance. It was about rebuilding peace, brick by brick, choice by choice. The calm was more satisfying than any confrontation, more powerful than any anger, and far more lasting than any hasty victory could have been. For the first time in months, I smiled without hesitation, not at anyone, not for anyone, at myself. And it was enough. The quiet life I had feared would feel empty now felt full, steady, safe, mine.
The weeks that followed were gentle but full. Life had returned to a rhythm I had almost forgotten, a rhythm that was ordinary, steady, and entirely under my own control. I woke each morning to sunlight spilling across the floor, to the soft kick of the baby inside me, and to the quiet certainty that everything that had been taken from me, peace, dignity, and stability, was now fully restored. I often sat at the table with my tea, looking at the folder that had begun this journey. The papers inside no longer carried tension. They were proof, evidence that preparation and patience outweigh anger and haste. I had learned that power is quiet. It does not need to shout. It waits, observes, and acts when the time is right. Visitors, when they came, commented on the calm. "You seem different," they said. I did not deny it. I had changed, but not in the way anyone expected. I had not become bitter. I had not become loud or confrontational. I had become steady. I had become deliberate. I had become someone who knew her worth and did not need to prove it through drama. The antagonist, the husband and the other woman, faded into the background of my life. They tried to push boundaries, once, twice, but each time they met the firm barrier of preparation and law. Panic had arrived, but it had dissipated quickly when faced with clarity and silence. In the end, they were left with their assumptions and misunderstandings, while I continued my life unshaken. I spent more time thinking about the small, quiet lessons my father had taught me, not in grand speeches, but in gestures, in habits, in patience. Every locked door, every carefully kept document, every silent observation was part of a system he had built for me long before I knew I would need it. That preparation had been his final gift, and I honored it by living wisely and calmly. At home, I began small traditions with the baby, reading in the morning light, placing flowers on the windowsill, cooking meals slowly and mindfully. Each act was ordinary but meaningful. I had learned that life's beauty lies in the details, and that dignity is maintained not in shouting, but in steady action. One evening, I sat by the window, looking at the streetlights flickering on as dusk fell. I whispered to the baby, "You will know that silence and patience are not weakness, they are strength." It was a quiet promise,
But in that quiet, I felt the full weight of power. Not the kind that forces, shouts, or hurts, but the kind that builds, protects, and restores. And that is the lesson I hope you take from this story. Power is quiet. Dignity is maintained in patience. Preparation is your strongest weapon. And peace, once restored, is more valuable than any revenge could ever be. If this story has touched you, please like, subscribe, and comment. Share your thoughts or experiences. Your voice matters. And if you want to support the creation of more stories like this, even a small contribution can help continue these life lessons to others who need them. Life moves forward. Challenges come and go. People may betray, test, or underestimate you, but calmness, preparation, and patience will always give you the strength to reclaim your life, quietly, deliberately, and fully. And in that quiet reclaiming, you will find your true power.